Good morning. Thank you, Pastor Albert, for forcing us to do this and giving us the opportunity to introduce ourselves. My name is Mike Krohe. This is my wife, Gina. We have 2 kids, Nathan and 5, and Emily 1. I wasn't nervous until about 2 minutes ago. I think you might have jinxed me, Patrick. We've been attending Mount Salem Church for the past 2 years, although I've had the privilege of knowing some of you much longer than that. I was born and raised here in Mount Salem. My parents lived right around the corner in the house where I grew up, and they still live here today. However, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. We didn't go to church on Sundays, and I grew up with a fairly negative outlook on religion and the weird and sometimes un-Christ-like behaviors that can come with it. I left the area immediately after high school to pursue a career. I moved to St. Catharines to study business at Brock. There I met Gina the day I moved in. She lived right across the hall from me in residence. We became great friends on day one, and it wasn't until after school finished that we finally started dating and eventually got married. We spent almost 15 years living in the Niagara region. Together we went from student rentals to our first apartment, buying our first house. Initially we thought it would be our forever home and that we'd stay in Niagara forever. But we could never escape the feeling that it wasn't where we were intended to be. We had feelings of loneliness, isolation, and countless conversations about longing to be closer to family and friends. But we felt that dream was impossible. We wouldn't be able to find work in a rural area like this without serious retraining and starting over. We also had feelings that something was missing from our lives. One thing that we learned was missing was Jesus. It took a long time to soften my heart to the idea of even attending church. Initially, it was to support Gina. And I'll admit I like the idea of raising a family in a tight-knit community with good values. However, I didn't know where to start. I knew nothing of the Bible or its stories. Despite my initial reservations, I began to see the positive impact of faith and community in our lives. It was through powerful messages, daily reading, a loving church community, and many answered prayers that I came to finally know Jesus and accept him in my heart. This transformation brought a profound sense of peace and purpose to our lives. Although looking back, there was all kinds of seeds planted, signs and wonders that indicated that God had been with me all along and with us. COVID and the events that followed felt like a miracle, and that God was sending us a message. The lockdowns forced us to work remotely for the unforeseeable future. I asked my boss at the time whether there'd be any issues if we were to relocate to be closer to family. Our son Nathan was almost 1 at the time, and we desperately needed the support from our family. Sorry. I'm not sure he knew how serious I was at the time. The next week I informed him that we listed our house, it sold, and we bought a new house all over the weekend. Yeah. And we'd be moving to St. Thomas. We spent 2 years in St. Thomas, where we attended Faith Church, which was where we were both baptized. We still felt like St. Thomas wasn't home. We were constantly traveling back and forth between St. Thomas and Mount Salem. When a house became available here, right across the street from my parents, Gina asked what I thought about it. My first response was, "Are you crazy?" I thought she was joking. She wasn't. We went to see it, fell in love, and moved in 2 months later. It has been such a blessing being so close to my parents and experiencing the love and joy that our kids bring to their lives. We started attending Mount Salem Church shortly after moving here, and I'll admit I was nervous about coming here for the first time. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I might feel like an outsider, not coming from a Mennonite background. But all these feelings went away the minute we entered. Everyone was so kind and welcoming. As some of you might remember, Gina was very pregnant with our youngest, Emily. And I remember Maggie Wolf coming over to us after our first service, offering a meal train when the baby came. It was incredibly generous, but I had doubts whether anyone would actually sign up for a meal for a couple of new people that nobody knows. But when Emily was born, we were blessed with 2 weeks of generous meals, or delicious meals, and we couldn't be more grateful for the kindness and generosity that you've shown, so thank you. I believe this is the community we were longing for in those times of loneliness and isolation. God has brought us here and removed all the barriers that we felt at the time were impossible to overcome. I couldn't be happier to be here and call Mount Salem Church home. We're incredibly grateful for the love and support we've received and look forward to growing and serving within this wonderful community. Thanks.
I don't want to break it. Okay, so you were supposed to be calm and collected, and you weren't. So here, we'll see how I do.
Do we still have emergency services on?
Okay, so hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me yet, I am Gina Krohe. Mike shared so well with you our family's journey to how we came to be on this stage, applying to be members of the church. But you should probably have an understanding of my background and faith journey, because Mike and I's are quite different, and specifically why I'm here today. So I was raised as a Catholic in the Wallaceburg, Sarnia area, and attended Catholic schools all my life. So religion was a part of my family and school life, though I'd best describe it as being in the background of our family and not the main focus. I did not develop a personal relationship or felt a connection to Jesus during my childhood that I recall. And then in my late teens, my mom's faith in God was shaken when my parents separated, and my dad was not a follower of Jesus at the time, so our family stopped attending church, and even the background presence of God was no longer there. But I didn't really think anything of it then, it seemed normal, and I especially didn't think anything of it during university, off on my own in a new town with no one in my life encouraging the presence of God to return. At the very end of university, Mike and I reconnected and started dating, as he mentioned, and that is when I started to feel a tug on my heart to start exploring faith, or at the very least, attend church again. Perhaps it was brought on by feeling a bit isolated in a new city, looking for some way to connect and get involved. This took some discussion and compromise with Mike, as he was only comfortable with a non-Catholic church, so we would both feel welcome given our different backgrounds. Our search for a church took some time. We were looking for a church that was serving the community, not just serving each other on Sunday mornings. We found a church in St. Catharines that had amazing anchor causes, which we very quickly became a part of. We slowly grew in our relationship with our church, joined life groups, was married by our pastor, volunteered in kids ministry. And then, as Mike mentioned, a big life-changing decision was made, and we made a big move, which meant making a change at church. The same values were still important to us, so we found a new church in St. Thomas, and slowly I started to get involved again. I joined women's Bible studies, volunteered in kids ministry, and started to feel connected to the community. It was at this church that my faith really grew, and I decided to be baptized. This was a big decision for me. It wasn't based on a sole moment in time where I suddenly came to love Jesus and I heard God's voice. For me, it was a slow process, as it usually is. I had to undo the fear that I needed to have myself and my life in order first. I thought that I needed to have scriptures memorized, know the Bible in and out. Perhaps this stemmed from my upbringing in a church built on routines, memorization, and structure. What a relief and burden lifted when God made me realize this was simply not true, and I was finally baptized. Most importantly, I wanted to genuinely and courageously express Jesus' love to our children and for it to fill our home. But I felt like I was not being fully honest if I did not take the step of baptism myself. And only a few months after our baptism, I found myself having to make yet another change in my faith journey when we moved to Mount Salem. So no, we didn't necessarily have to change churches. It was only a 20-minute drive. But Mike was feeling very strongly about trying out this church. One of our reasons for moving was to be somewhere we felt we could confidently establish roots for our family and just really dig in and feel that sense of community. So it just seemed to make sense to include church in that plan. It was also a much friendlier commute with 2 young kids just right around the corner. So we gave it a try. I had a bit of imposter syndrome, I admit, when I realized we were one of the few people that seemed to not be related to anyone else in the church. But 2 years later, here we are, looking to take the next step to becoming even more established in the faith community here. So clearly a good impression was made, which Mike explained well. But it was not only the love and sense of community we felt here, it was the anchor causes, both current and potential future ones, that were important to us. As I mentioned earlier, that has always been a high priority for us, the church serving the community, not just each other. This is the type of love we want our kids to see and also be a part of. We also have been lacking people and friendships in our lives that challenge us with regards to our faith, and we feel we'd be able to find that here. We are excited to become members of this community and start becoming more and more involved over time. Thank you.